All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty interesting, something that I think can be a real game changer for anyone learning English. We're going deep on slang.
You got it. And, while having that strong foundation in formal English, all the grammar, it's super important, but slang is really where it's at
Yeah.
if you want to sound natural, like you actually belong. I mean, it's how you bridge that gap from the textbook to real conversations.
It's so true. You can memorize all the rules in the world, but if you don't understand slang, you're kind of missing out on this huge chunk of how native speakers actually talk. Like all that flavor, the humor, the cultural stuff that gets woven into the language.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, slang really is like this living, breathing snapshot of culture.
Yeah.
It's constantly reflecting what's trending, the way we interact with each other. It just adds this vibrant layer, this evolving dimension to English.
So today we're going to break it all down for you guys, like what slang really is, how it's different in different places, different generations, and of course, how you can actually use it yourself to sound more fluent and connect with native speakers, and even understand movies and music better.
And trust me, we've got a lot to cover. We'll be looking at the differences between, say, UK, US, Australian slang, the way different age groups use language, and even the huge influence of social media, TikTok and all that.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First things first, what is slang? I mean, we all kind of have an idea, but beyond just informal language, what's its real purpose?
Well, at its core, you could say slang is informal language that belongs to specific groups, right? Used in everyday conversations. And those groups could be, age-based, social circles, people from a certain region. And what's interesting is that it often pops up because people want more expressive ways to communicate, more exclusive, maybe. It's all about connecting and belonging.
So it's kind of like a secret code almost?
In a way, yeah. And because it's so tied to culture and how people actually talk, it's constantly evolving, changing so fast. That's part of what makes it so dynamic.
Right, so you won't necessarily find these terms in a dictionary.
Exactly. It's fluid. It depends on context.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so tricky to pin down, but also so fascinating.
So what is it about slang that makes it so appealing? Why do we come up with these new words and phrases?
Well, I think it comes down to needing a way to say things with more immediacy, more emotion, more playfulness. Like, formal language can be a bit stiff, right? Slang is direct. It can be funny, ironic, even rebellious. Think of it as like adding these extra layers of meaning to what we're saying.
So it's about expressing yourself more authentically. So like, how about, for example, the word cool? I mean, it's been around forever, but now we hear lit and even fire. What's going on there?
That's a perfect example. Cool. Worked for a long time. Simple, straightforward approval. But then as culture changed, people wanted something, well, more intense to express that enthusiasm. And that's where lit came in. It probably has roots in AAVE, African American Vernacular English, and brings with it this sense of energy, excitement. And now fire takes that intensity even further.
So it's like the language needs to keep evolving to capture those ever-changing feelings and ideas. And a lot of these slang terms, they have pretty interesting stories behind them.
Or absolutely. Many slang terms come from specific subcultures or even historical events, like bad to the bone, for example. It comes from a blues song signifying someone rebellious, tough. Knowing where these terms come from, it really adds another dimension to their meaning.
Right, so it's not just random. And speaking of differences, we were talking about regional variations earlier. They can be a real challenge for English learners.
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, the same word can have completely different meanings depending on where you are. Like take banger, for example. In the UK, it can be a fantastic song. But in the US, you might be thinking about, I don't know, fireworks or something completely different.
Right, and those kinds of misunderstandings can happen all the time. So understanding slang isn't just about, like, sounding cool. It's really about navigating those potential pitfalls and connecting with the language on a deeper level.
Exactly. It's about accessing those nuances of everyday speech that textbooks just don't cover. It gives you cultural context, helps you avoid those awkward moments.
Okay, so now that we have a good idea of what slang is and why it matters, let's get into some specific examples. Starting with, let's say, the US. What are some common slang terms you might hear there?
Well, as we mentioned, lit is still going strong. It's that go-to word to describe something exciting, high energy, like that concert was lit.
Okay, what else?
You've got fam, which is that term of endearment for close friends, family. It just creates that instant feeling of closeness, like
Hmm.
hanging with the fam tonight. And then there's savage, which is used to describe something bold, ruthless, maybe even a bit brutal, but in a good way,
Yeah.
like her comeback was savage.
Right. So those are some good ones to know. Now, what about across the pond in the UK? What are some of those quintessential British slang terms that we should be listening for?
All right, well, in the UK, you've got cheeky. It's a great word. It means mischievous, playful, maybe a little bit daring, like fancy a cheeky pint after work. And then there's in it, which we talked about earlier, that tag question at the end of the sentence to show agreement.
Right, like it's a bit cool today, in it?
Exactly.
And what about down under? Any Australian slang we should be aware of?
Oh, tons. Australians love to shorten words, often adding O or IE at the end, like Arvo for afternoon, Bottle O for liquor store, things like that. And then there's the classic, she'll be right, which basically means everything will work out, no worries.
I love that. She'll be right. So it's not just about different words, it's about different ways of looking at the world, different attitudes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've looked at some regional differences. Now let's talk about how slang changes across generations. What might sound cool to one generation might sound totally outdated to another, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, think about the baby boomers. Back in their day, groovy was the word.
Groovy.
Yeah, if something was cool, it was groovy.
So that definitely places you in a certain time period.
For sure.
What about the 80s and 90s? What were some of the big slang words back then?
Well, in the 80s and 90s, you had rad and dope to describe something awesome. And if something was truly exceptional, you might say it was all that and a bag of chips.
Totally rad. Now let's fast forward to today. Gen Z. What are some of the key slang terms they're using?
Gen Z, they're always coming up with new stuff. You've got vibe check, which is like checking someone's energy or the mood of a situation. Then there's no cap, which means no lie, for real. Sus is short for suspicious, when something seems off.
Yeah, sus has definitely made its way into the mainstream. What else?
Slaps, it's a big one. Mostly to describe music that's really good, like this new track slaps. And of course, lit is still popular with this generation. What's interesting is how fast these terms can come and go, often driven by trends on TikTok and other social media.
Right, so slang within a generation can even vary depending on which corner of the internet they're in. So many micro dialects. Understanding these generational differences is key to connecting with people of different ages, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. It helps you bridge those communication gaps, relate to people's experiences, get those cultural references.
Speaking of online communities, let's talk about the role of social media and pop culture in all of this. I mean, it feels like so much new slang originates online these days.
You're absolutely right. Social media is like this breeding ground for slang. It just explodes on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. It can go viral in a matter of days.
And we've seen so many internet acronyms like FOMO, YOLO, TBT go from being this online shorthand to being used in everyday conversations.
Yeah, they're just so catchy and easy to use, right? They really capture those shared experiences that we all have in this digital age.
But it's not just about shortening existing phrases, it's also about entirely new terms that are being created online.
Oh, definitely. I mean, look at a word like slay. It took off online as this way to express admiration, like someone is doing something amazingly well,
Hmm.
you know? looking fantastic. And then there's mood, which has gone beyond just describing an emotion to being this shorthand for something that perfectly captures how you're feeling at that moment.
And then you've got the influence of pop culture, like music, movies, TV shows, which has always been huge in popularizing slang.
Oh, massive. I mean, think about iconic lines from movies, catchphrases from shows. They become part of the language. And music, especially hip hop and pop, they're constantly introducing new slang, which then seeps into everyday speech.
It's like this back and forth between social media and pop culture, constantly shaping the slang we use to reflect what's happening right now.
Exactly. And if you want to keep your English fresh and relevant, staying tuned in to social media trends and pop culture is crucial.
So we've talked about what slang is, where it comes from, but now let's get practical. How does using slang actually affect the way we communicate with each other?
Well, when you use slang well, it makes you sound more relaxed, more natural, relatable. It helps you express those subtle emotions, attitudes, without having to spell everything out.
So it's about adding that extra layer of meaning, that subtext, to what we're saying.
Exactly. And it can also create this instant sense of connection with people. Like you're speaking the same language, you get the same references, you belong to the same group.
It's like a social signal, like a linguistic handshake.
Exactly. But of course, there are also some potential downsides to using slang. You have to be careful.
Right. Because it's not always appropriate, is it?
No, definitely not. I mean, in a formal setting, like a job interview or a business meeting, it can come across as unprofessional, even disrespectful. And as we talked about before, those regional and generational differences, they can lead to a lot of confusion if your audience isn't familiar with the terms you're using.
Right. You wouldn't use the same slang with your friends as you would with your boss. So context is everything. When is it okay to use slang? And when should we stick to more formal English?
Good question. Generally speaking, slang is perfect for informal settings. Like when you're hanging out with friends, family, or chatting online, it adds personality, shows that you're relaxed, helps you connect on a more personal level.
So you wouldn't use it in a presentation or a job interview, probably?
Probably not a good idea. In professional situations, academic settings, or when you're talking to people you don't know well, it's always best to stick with standard English. It's clearer, more respectful.
And you've got to consider your audience, too. Like someone from a different generation or a different country might not understand the slang you're using.
Oh, definitely. So being aware of your audience is key. Slang can be a fantastic way to connect, but if it's not used carefully, it can actually create a barrier in communication.
So it all comes down to knowing when and where to use it. It's about having that social awareness, that linguistic intelligence. Now let's talk about how slang shows up in our entertainment. I mean, movies, TV shows, music, they're full of it, right?
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. And it plays such an important role. It helps set the tone of a movie, a TV show, gives the characters more depth. I mean, if everyone spoke perfectly formal English, it just wouldn't sound real, would it?
No, it would feel so stiff. And it helps the audience connect with the characters, too. Like if they're using slang that you use yourself, it creates this instant bond.
Exactly. And it gives you a window into the culture, the time period, Like think about Friends, that classic sitcom. It's full of slang that was totally 90s, early 2000s.
Right. You had Joey's "How you doing?" which became this iconic pickup line.
Exactly. And then there's "We were on a break," which became this classic way to describe relationship drama.
And what about a show like The Office? It's set in this very ordinary workplace, but it's still full of slang.
It is. And they use it in a very clever way, like those little almost in-jokes that people in an office might share.
Yeah.
That's what she said is a perfect example. A bit cheeky.
Right. And then you've got music, especially hip hop and pop, which are always pushing the boundaries with language.
Oh, yeah. Musicians are always at the forefront of slang. They introduce new terms, new ways of using language that then spread to the wider culture. Like, think about the word flex. It comes from hip-hop, originally meaning to show off, and now it's used everywhere. And then you have those catchy phrases that just take off, like Cardi B's "Oh Kerr."
And they become part of everyday conversation. It's amazing how a single line from a song can have that kind of impact.
It really shows you the power of music and how it can shape language.
So paying attention to the slang used in the media you consume is a great way to learn, right?
Oh, definitely. It helps you see how it's used in context. And if you want to incorporate some of those terms into your own vocabulary, well, you've got to hear them in action.
All right, so let's try to make this even more concrete. Let's imagine some real-life scenarios. Let's say you're at a cafe with your friends and a new song comes on.
Right. And you go, oh, man, this song is fire. That instantly tells everyone you think it's amazing, it's really good, way more impactful than just saying, I like this song.
Perfect. Or maybe you're describing a really relaxing day you had.
Right. You might say something like, honestly, it was pretty chill. That just sums up that whole relaxed, easygoing feeling.
What about if a friend is telling you about this crazy adventure they had?
That's wild.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. I can't believe it.
Okay, and what if someone's being a bit dramatic, overreacting?
You might say, stop being so extra, which basically means calm down. It's not that big of a deal.
And what about if you watched a movie that you thought was going to be bad, but it turned out to be great?
You might say, it was low-key awesome, meaning it was surprisingly good.
Those are great examples. It really shows how slang can add those specific shades of meaning, those subtle emotions to our conversations. And practicing these in real-life situations is the best way to get comfortable using them.
Absolutely. It's about finding your own voice with slang, knowing when and how to use it naturally.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about online communication. Because the internet has its own whole world of slang.
It does. I mean, the internet's completely changed how we communicate. And online slang is all about speed, creativity. It's constantly evolving.
Right, like think about terms like DM me or ghosting. Those have become so commonplace online.
Yeah, DM me is just a quick way to say, send me a private message. And ghosting is that awful thing where someone just disappears from your life without explanation, which unfortunately happens a lot online.
And then you've got meme culture, which has given us terms like mood and same.
Oh yeah, memes are like these little capsules of online slang, right? They spread so fast. And mood and same are just perfect for expressing that feeling of like, yeah, I relate to that.
And then there's TikTok, which is this whole other world of slang. They're constantly coming up with new trends and phrases that come and go so quickly.
Exactly, like I'm baby or it's the blank for me. They're often funny, self-deprecating.
Right, so there's a lot of humor in online slang.
Tons. And then you've got emojis and GIFs, which are like visual slang, right?
It's almost like a whole new visual language has emerged online.
Yeah.
So if you want to truly understand how people communicate online, you got to be in tune with online slang.
Oh, 100%. It's essential if you want to navigate online spaces, understand internet culture, connect with people.
Okay, so we've talked about regional slang, generational slang, online slang. Let's zoom out for a minute and look at the bigger picture. How has slang evolved over time? What were some of the big trends, from old school to new school?
Well, it's really interesting to see how slang reflects the changes in society. Like back in the 1960s, you had terms like groovy and far out, which were very much part of the counterculture movement.
Definitely gives you a sense of the time.
Right. And then in the 80s and 90s, you had that more energetic, bold slang, like rad, wicked, totally.
And then, of course, the digital revolution in the 2000s and 2010s really changed everything.
Oh, yeah. The internet completely exploded the slang landscape.
Right.
That's when we saw terms like YOLO, FOMO, lit, savage, slay, shade take off. It really shows you how much influence online culture has on language.
And it's funny how some older terms can come back around too, like lit.
Exactly. Slang can be cyclical,
Oh.
What's old becomes new again.
So it's this ever-changing landscape, always adapting to the times. Now let's go back to those regional variations, because we've touched on some differences between countries, but slang can also vary within a country, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like within the U.S., for example, you have so many regional dialects. I mean, a small store in New York City is a bodega, but in
Yeah.
the South, it's a corner store or a market. And the way people address a group, that's totally different depending on where you are. Y'all in the South, you guys in other regions.
Right. It's amazing how much variation there is, even within a single country. And being sensitive to those nuances can really make a difference in how you connect with people.
Absolutely. It shows that you're paying attention, that you're making an effort to understand their local culture, which can really build rapport.
Now, let's talk about the connection between slang and cultural identity, because the way we use language can say a lot about who we are.
Right, we definitely can.
Right.
Slang plays a huge role in shaping and expressing identity, whether it's your age, your background, your social group.
You mentioned earlier how AAVE, African American Vernacular English, has had a big influence on mainstream slang.
Yeah, terms like woke, lit, fam, they all originated in AAVE. And they're now used by people from all sorts of backgrounds, which is really cool to see. It shows you how language can travel across cultures.
And there are other groups that have their own distinct slang, too.
Oh, tons. The LGBTQ plus community, for example, they've created a whole vocabulary of slang that expresses their shared experiences, their identity.
Right, like shade, read, work.
Exactly. And even social and political movements can give rise to new slang. Like, think about the term cancel culture.
And of course, there's generational slang, which really marks those divisions between different age groups, like Gen Z with their slay, sus, no cap.
For sure. So slang is more than just words. It's culture, it's identity, it's history. And understanding that context really gives you a deeper appreciation for the richness of language.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about the fun side of slang, because it can be really funny, right?
Oh, totally. Slang is all about injecting humor and personality into our conversations. Like instead of saying, that's so funny, you might say, I'm dead.
Yeah.
It just adds that extra emphasis.
Right. It's about exaggeration, playing with language.
Exactly. And there's something about using slang in the right way at the right time that can just make a situation hilarious. Like calling someone extra when they're being overly dramatic or using sus in a way that's completely unexpected.
So it's about being playful, spontaneous.
Yeah, exactly. And it can really strengthen those bonds with people. Like you're in on the joke together.
Now let's go back to social media for a minute, because slang online is this whole other beast.
It is. I mean, it's constantly evolving. It's super creative. And it uses all these different tools like hashtags, emojis, GIFs.
Right. Hashtags can group slang terms together. Emojis add that extra layer of emotion. GIFs can be these hilarious reactions. It's a whole new way of communicating.
Exactly. It's multi-layered. And the way social media is set up with its algorithms and its influencers, it allows slang to spread like wildfire.
It's incredible how fast it can travel online. So for someone learning English, understanding and being able to use slang effectively, that can be a real game changer.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it adds so much authenticity to your language. It helps you understand the culture, the humor, the trends. It allows you to connect with native speakers on a much deeper level.
So it's about going beyond the textbook, immersing yourself in the real living language.
Exactly. And while it's important to know when slang is and isn't appropriate, don't be afraid to experiment. Try out different terms, see how they feel. Find the slang that resonates with you, the slang that reflects your interests.
So to wrap up our deep dive today, it's clear that slang is a vital part of the English language. It adds color, it adds humor, it helps us connect with each other in a way that formal language just can't.
Couldn't agree more. And because it's constantly evolving, learning about slang is a journey that never really ends.
Exactly. So keep your ears open, pay attention to how people are using language around you, and don't be afraid to jump in and try it out yourself.
Slang is your passport to a more vibrant and authentic experience with English.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of slang. We'll catch you guys next time.